What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, life and typology stuff. One of the dreaded hybrid videos. How much do you work standard? How much do you work typology? I don't know, so I think we will settle in and take all the time we need with this one. So to begin, and maybe this will be a big The Godfather extravaganza, the movie and the book are very similar. The movie is a refinement of what's in the book. Basically, everything that's in the movie is exactly what's in the book. The main differences are with the movie, a bunch of side stuff gets cut out, and some of the same essences within the book haven't been changed but are expressed differently, namely in Michael's character. And I learned the only two books in the Godfather universe that Mario Puzo wrote are The Godfather, the first one, it was intended to be a standalone thing, and The Sicilian, which is a completely different story but still set in the Godfather universe. And it's a good book on its own, but it has some very interesting Michael stuff in there, even though it's limited. So let's start with what Michael is in both pieces of media. In both stories, Michael is gloomy but driven, headstrong, goes his own way both in spite of his family and to spite his family. And in both stories, he's an INTJ, a clear one. But each version of Michael expresses both his attitude and his type differently. Same exact things expressed differently. It's one of the reasons you don't want to get too specific when you're doing typology, because two people of the exact same type, even of the exact same background, same experiences, will still use their functions differently while still being clearly that type. So in terms of animals, I view movie Michael more like a spider. He's inscrutable, or difficult to scrut. He'll almost never tell anyone exactly what he's thinking or feeling and why. Now, this isn't to say he's impossible to read, but with movie Michael, you never know for sure. For example, movie Michael says, "This isn't personal, Sonny. It's strictly business." Now, that's very obviously not the case, but that isn't the way he plays it. Even if it seems obvious that it isn't business, he will still insist it's business. And he says a lot less. And people, or popular conception says INTJs are super cold. That couldn't be further from the truth. INTJs use tertiary FI, where an ENTJ might be able to repress their FI, or an INFP might have a healthier way of using or expressing their FI. INTJs have neither option. They can't stuff it in a cabinet, and they also can't integrate it with the rest of the world easily. It's this fire that you can't do much about. Now, what they can do is express that heat differently. Movie Michael keeps it under wraps and then focuses it, like a focusing lens, like a laser beam. And that reflects in his strategizing. Movie Michael sets everything up particularly so he can express himself violently in these focused moments. Book Michael is a lot different. Still gloomy, still headstrong, but a lot more flippant. Movie Michael is irrationality orchestrated. I think it's one of his defining contradictions. Book Michael is a lot more like a lion, but in the actual lion sense. When you say someone is like a lion, you imagine them as this larger-than-life, noble warrior thing. Real lions are more like house cats that can rip you apart. Book Michael is an equally effective strategist, but it's because he's flippant. He isn't inscrutable because he's hiding what he is. He's inscrutable because you don't know what he is. He says things, these things don't line up, and it almost seems like he doesn't know who he is. Where Movie Michael says, it's not personal, it's business, Book Michael says, of course it's personal. Everything is personal. Don't expect me not to take this personally and to respond personally. And he openly states as much. With Movie Michael, you can feel these dreadful plans forming. Sometimes you wonder if he's even human. With Book Michael, things will be fine, and then you'll realize, oh shit, this is something he cares about, and he is capable enough to do something. And once Book Michael decides he's going to do something, he is committed to it. He's not going to stop until it's done. And you can say the exact same thing about Movie Michael, but again, it comes out differently. Book Michael is a lot more emotive, and I don't want to say controlled by his emotions, but he is attuned to them. Example. Movie Michael, you can tell once he reunites with Kay, she is, to him, basically nothing but a womb. Book Michael, when... Actually, no, he doesn't reunite with Kay. Kay reunites with him. And during their reunion, you get the sense maybe he wasn't going to go looking for Kay, but now that she has come to him, he is interested in her again, all of a sudden, for real, maybe. Movie Michael goes back to Kay because he has a job for her. He has a role for her to fulfill. Book Michael, well, he didn't really have a purpose for her, which is why he didn't seek her out, but now that she has thrown herself at his feet, he will come up with something for her to do. And this is the shit where type gets tricky, but it's the most fun. Both Michaels are the same, both INTJs are the same, in that FI is what they are. This is their focus. But Movie Michael leans more toward the TE side of things, and Book Michael leans more toward the SE side of things. But it gets tricky because the pitfalls are the same, even though the preferences are different. For example, they're both equally bad and insecure about SE. Movie Michael plays his cards close to his chest and relies on these long-reaching plans because he fears or doesn't deal well with a lack of control. He weaves webs so he can catch problems and then, once he has them, bite them viciously. Book Michael is flippant and rebellious because he shares that same fear of lack of control, and he'll just do shit to prove that he's in control. That's partially why Book Michael likes getting his hands dirty. He deals with his inferior function by stepping forward and swinging instead of stepping back and planning. But the insecurities, the fears, are the exact same. Another example for Book Michael. In the book, the McCluskey punch is a lot worse than it is in the movie. It disfigures him. He loses some teeth, gets a big scar, his nose runs regularly, and he is in constant pain. Not piercing pain, but constant discomfort. And for most of the book, he keeps it that way. He enjoys looking like an intimidating, scary monster, and the pain keeps him focused. And he gets it fixed much later, only after Kay pressures him to using their child. She insists it doesn't bother her, even though it clearly does, but she doesn't want their son, they have two sons actually, it's not a son and a daughter in the book, to be afraid of their monstrous father. And for that reason, he gets it fixed. FI at work. But at the same time, is it? This could just be a whim. And you know, Movie Michael wouldn't let Kay pressure him into brushing his teeth differently. Once again, FI. Movie Michael wouldn't allow anything like that because of how important control is to him. How important control is to his identity. Book Michael wants to keep the wound for identity reasons, and you don't really know why he agrees to change it. It is ostensibly because of what Kay says about their children and partially out of love for her, but maybe actually because Book Michael spends a lot of time with Kay once they're reunited, talking through what a marriage with him now would entail. In the book, it really feels like she's the one pushing for it, and Michael is consenting because he does love her, but he lies to her all the same, yet at the end of the book, they have found some kind of equilibrium in which they make sense to each other. It's hard to say because Movie Michael and Book Michael do make almost all the same decisions, but with very little expressive differences and for different reasons. But they're all the same decisions, and they're all expressing the same core, i.e., hatred of being controlled and taking everything personally. Like Fabrizio, by the way, the dude who blew up Apollonia. Movie, there's no closure there, which is a good thing. The movie is great because it cuts out all the auxiliary stuff and keeps it's all killer. The Godfather is a long movie, but it is all killer. All the best parts of the book. But the book takes so much time with all this auxiliary stuff. The issue with the book is it does feel auxiliary, but at the same time it's brilliant. When you go back and I've been listening to it, not reading it. You go back and listen to it again, you dread going through these parts, but then you're in them and you're loving them. 5-star, 1-star, I don't know, to borrow a line from Saint O'Neill, but it held me. Anyway, Book Michael, 7 years later, Fabrizio gets his comeuppance. And here's another difference I don't know what to make of, but I would say is a difference between Book Michael and Movie Michael. Not spoiling the Sicilian, but at the end of the Sicilian, Michael comes back to America after his extended stay in Sicily, and he wants to be a hero. There's that FI again. This belief in values, principle, more than the strictly practical. And this is a nice little difference between movie and book Vito, too. Actually, I think movie and book Vito are very similar in terms of values, but you'd have to look harder at it in the movie to understand what's going on, whereas in the book it's a lot clearer. Vito is a hyper practical person. Everything with Vito is practicality. Where you might think something is a value statement or a values move, there is a values component to it, but it all serves practicality, survival. The difference between a TI tertiary and an FI tertiary. At the end of the Sicilian, Michael wants to do the principled, dangerous thing, the higher-minded thing, and Vito shoots him down. And at that moment, he teaches his son, nothing is more important than keeping yourself alive and keeping yourself in a position from which you can do things. If you sacrifice yourself to save your family, that's noble, but now you can't protect them because you sacrificed yourself for them. So if you were to need to, let's say, lose a son so you could maintain your position and keep yourself alive, keep yourself free, keep yourself powerful, to try to do good to save the rest of the family, then that's the option you need to take. But you can strip that back even further. It seems like at Vito's core, that self-survival thing is the most important thing. All of this values stuff, family values stuff, good relationship stuff, respect stuff, it's all auxiliary to keeping yourself alive. It's such an interesting look into Vito that it would seem like it would go against everything written in The Godfather and in the movie, but it's not. You go back and you read The Godfather again, and you see it. And even though The Sicilian was written later, you see it in The Godfather still. There's a change in Michael. He's still that fire-souled, fear of control guy, but after this point, Book Michael steps more into that strategist position versus Movie Michael. Movie Michael, it feels like he was always the strategist, and he codified it by killing McCluskey and Solozzo. Book Michael, not so much. When he's a young man, he's a rebel. Then he becomes more of this strategist, less of a hothead, still flippant, still gloomy, but less of a hothead. Yet, even within this strategist role, you still get that heart, even though it's a confused, conflicted, hot and cold heart. Versus with Movie Michael, it feels like cold heart all the time with flare-ups of flaming hot heart. Actually, there is another good way to look at this. Returning to typology and FI for a moment. How protected or buried does each version of Michael keep their soul? And you can measure this by looking at K. Movie Michael buries his heart so deep, you don't know if it's there. And you get these moments, you're pretty sure it must be there, otherwise he wouldn't be feeling or acting this way, but again, buried so deep it's hard to tell. There's no soul for anyone to latch on to. Movie K turns on Michael because, well, the lying to her, that moment she realizes Michael did in fact kill Carlo, that hit both versions of K hard, but how the different Michaels dealt with K's emotions after that, completely different. And even though Puzo helped... Oh boy. Godfather 2. Puzo's involved, Puzo's a writer. I still consider that Coppola's Michael. Versus the books, Mario's Michael. With Movie Michael, when that door shuts, that is the last of Michael's soul Kay ever sees. And that's probably why she turns on him. She's not his wife. She is a thing that carries his children. Book Michael, completely different. And Book K, completely different in response. In the book, they make amends. Kind of. It's a weird amends. You and Kay both know Michael is not being totally on the level with her. At the same time, he is vulnerable enough with her and just honest enough with her, just caring enough with her. You know he does care about her, but the circumstances of Michael's employment or employing act as like a blanket of interference, and within that interference, you don't know exactly where Michael's soul falls. All you know is that yes, he is a monster and a liar, and also, yes, he loves her and their kids. Where the dial falls between that, you don't know, but you know there are two poles there. Movie Michael, you don't have those poles at all. With Movie Michael, his soul is buried so deep there is nothing anyone can grab onto. With Book Michael, his soul is just on the surface enough, there is just enough to grab onto, to try to believe in or to care about. And that's why Book K, at the end of the book, every single morning goes with Mama Corleone to church, Catholic church, to pray for her husband's soul. The something they have is demonic and fucked up, but there is a something there. And there probably is a something, some kind of a something there with Movie Michael, but damn, it's buried so deep and it's warped so terribly by the cold, you don't know. So, Movie Michael contends with his own soul by fading into the shadows, coming out to strike hard and fast, and then returning to the shadows. Book Michael plows into the confusion and deals with his soul by embracing the contradiction. And I think that's why in the movie the Godfather Part 2, killing Fredo was such a contentious point between Coppola and Puzo. Puzo compromised with Coppola by saying, well, Michael might kill Fredo, but he would wait until, or no, Coppola was the one who came to Puzo with the waiting until Mama Corleone is dead idea, and he said, okay, that is the condition that would make Michael able to do this, which confused Coppola because it seemed to him like, of course, Michael would kill Fredo. Now, the compromise worked out beautifully for the character, for the movie Michael, because that to me demonstrates movie Michael does in fact have a soul, but it's just a warped, cold one. And at the same time, the fact that they had this disagreement speaks to Book Michael, because Book Michael, even if Fredo was involved, even with everything we know about Book Michael, I don't know if Book Michael would have Fredo killed. Maybe he would find another option. It's possible, maybe even probable, but I think Book Michael, if he were to get into that situation, would be connected enough with his soul to figure something else out. But again, you don't know. That's what makes Book Michael so interesting. It's how flippant he is, or how you never know what will strike Book Michael the way it strikes him. Versus Movie Michael, you have a pretty clear idea of how he works and how he operates, but you never know for sure. That's what makes Movie Michael interesting. But it's all about that FI and those function preferences. The exact same person, same background, same family, same functions, same type, expressed differently. Two people of the exact same type can be so different because they're similar. But we'll cut it here. I think we managed to balance standard video and typology video pretty well, better than I thought we were going to. You have seen the differences between Book and Movie Michael, and you have seen, using them, the differences people of the exact same type and background can have just by the minorest of function preferences. And I get to talk about, or got to talk about, probably Saint Coppola soon enough. I don't see a way he doesn't get sainted. I just need to spend more time with him. And if you didn't know, Coppola's commentaries for lots of his movies are on YouTube now. Good stuff. Strongly recommended. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.